have other resource person, Mr. Claude Alvarez, who is
slide?
virtually present with us.
Screen.
I would now like to call Mr. Claude Alvarez, who is Director of Goa Foundation and Editor of Other India Press, to take up a session on how to start a movement for environmental issues. Welcome you, sir, to this training program.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Loud and clear, because I'm using a battered old laptop. My main system is not working very well.
You're audible to us, sir. No
Very
issues.
clear, no distortion.
No.
No
Perfectly.
distortion,
Yeah.
sir. It's clear.
Good. Okay.
Yeah.
So, should I start?
Yeah.
Yes, sir, you can start with your session, sir.
Yeah, I've been given the subject of how to start movements around environmental issues. And my own personal history is that I've been involved in environmental issues for the last 40 years. I think even before some of you in the audience were born. And so it creates a dense experience and expertise which is difficult to put across in the space of 30 minutes or even 45 minutes. But I'll try and speak my mind about how we can approach this issue. Now, one of few basic preliminary things I want to say is that we are obsessed with economic issues, and there are very few people to worry about environmental issues. If you look at it, the environment is actually the mother of the economy. But in today's world, the economy has become the mother of the environment and of the ecosystems and so on. So our principal preoccupation is only with economic issues. And we only listen to a problem or get worried about a problem if it has serious environmental implications. For example, if you have to close down a factory which has got 500 people employed because its pollution load has gone beyond a certain amount, then people begin to worry, if we close the unit, how do these people survive? And so many workers will be out of a job, and the industrial production will come down in that particular product and so on. So always the worry is this. Now, one of the principal reasons that we environmentalists have difficulty on working with environmental issues is that the major army of people, I call it army of people, is really trained to deal only with economic issues. If we take the schooling and education and college and university and professional college system, the entire system is geared to producing people who want a job. They want a low quality job, high quality job, or a computer job, or this job, or whatever. They all want a job. And the whole business of education today is basically about people trying to get a job and trying to qualify for a job. And all jobs are looked at in only economic terms. Means, how much do I get a wage? How long will I get this wage? When can I get an increment? What can I get out of this? And so on. So the mental preoccupation, the mindset of people is largely only in this economic sphere, and the environmental sphere has really been banished from this. And it's very difficult if somebody has spent 20 to 25 years, formative years, only with dealing with the problem of getting a job and fitting into society or into an industrial production machine where he can be assured of a stable income, then it's going to be very difficult to get that person to think using a different vocabulary and a different language. It's almost impossible. I found in most cases, most of my colleagues, and my colleagues I'm talking about government servants, panchayat members, sometimes people in the village, people in academia, most of them are not skilled to deal with environmental issues. They can come out with any number of academic studies, researches, reports, etc., which deal with jobs, with the economy, with production, with investment, with stocks, with all those type of things. As a matter of fact, if you look at the number of people who are involved in the business of doing business, it's phenomenal. You have people, you have institutions which keep people training, keep training people only in this aspect and very little. I mean, let's forget about these small environment courses that are added on as an adjunct because the institution wants to look, very politically correct or, in keeping with the times or whatever it is. But by and large, the trend, I think you will understand what I'm saying, by and large, the trend of everybody and all institutions is to create people whom we call economic individuals. And they are very much bothered about economics. And there's a big disjunct or a big separation or a big gap between what we do in these institutions, particularly the training institutions, and what is happening outside in the real world where the environment operates. So if you look at the two armies, I call them two armies. If you look at the army which has been geared and created to keep the economy so-called going and alive, and you look at the army that is there to look at, for example, the manner in which we protect nature, we look at natural resources, we look at sustainability in natural resources, we look at rehabilitation of damaged portions of nature, you look at the management of wildlife sanctuaries, you will find that the proportions are completely out of gear. You could say probably about 97% of the people in one army, that's the army, that's a big army. 97% of the population is involved in that. Well, you will get only 3% of people who are dismissed as social activists, environmentalists, as though they've got some sort of a new type of COVID virus or something. It's a peculiar quality of people. They go around trying to prevent people, like during the construction of the bullet train and its impact on the area colony, or people trying to broaden the roads in Pune, and then they've got to remove these heritage trees. And you will get, some person who will come there and start objecting to the trees. So it looks like these are really the minority. Now look at the contrast. The environment is the mother. The protectors of the mother are very few. The environment is only a small portion. It's a subset of the environment, but it's got the maximum population, part of the population devoted to it. And that's why environmental agitation and building environment movements is extremely difficult, because it depends on what a person is preoccupied with and what a person is passionately about and what a person decides he wants to invest maximum time of the day in. So if he is worried about his wage and if he is worried about his income, then he's going to spend maximum time on that, and he's not going to be really much concerned about environmental issues. And that's why we find it extremely difficult to build environment movements, because the constituency is just not there. It should be there for a simple reason. At the damage to environment, as I was listening to some bits of the earlier lecture, the damage to the environment affects everybody, whether you are rich or a poor or a professor or an activist or a panchayat or whatever. It affects everybody. For example, if there's climate change, it is affecting everybody. This morning I had a conversation with somebody, with one of my former friends in Lake, and he told me that this year, for the first time in several decades, there's been no snowfall in Lake.
Same.
Now you can imagine Now, you may be an environmentalist, but what are you going to do about no snowfall in Leh? But if there is no snowfall in Leh, then what happens is that snowfall used to percolate into the ground, it should prevent also the water from getting out anywhere. And usually it will percolate in the ground and then get to the roots of the apple trees and so on. But what happens when there is no snowfall and there is no water? He was telling me that they have put a lot of money into collection ponds for some sort of a situation in the future when there may be shortage of water because the glaciers are melting. And so how do we store the water that we have? Now imagine these are people in the Himalayas and they are already dreaming. They are living cheek by jowl with ancient packs of ice called glaciers which are there, which is frozen water. And they are beginning to think about what shall we do because of the shortage of water. And they face for the first time a situation when the source of the water is gone. He said he checked with the people in Gulmarg, which is, in another area in Jammu and Kashmir. He said Gulmarg had every year 6 feet of snow. He says this year there are only bare mountains in Gulmarg. And this has never before been seen in the history of Gulmarg. Now you really begin to get worried and people read about it in the newspapers. Even if it comes in the newspapers, one doubts nowadays because the newspaper facility has long ago sold its soul and they will only give you now one type of news. But even if we do get through social media to look about it, but I mean, it's something that will be very remote. And you say, anyway, it's not affecting me in the least because I'm living in Goa, so why should I worry about what's happening there? And I can't literally do anything about what's happening in it. It's very far away. But most people, as a matter of fact, have become de-linked even from their most immediate environment. And partly the reason is that they have destroyed all the natural environments in their own cities. We used to have a lot of discussion here in Goa. I live in Goa, by the way. I'm doing this conference from Goa. And we used to have a lot of people saying that why are all these millions of people coming to Goa? For what? We have a population of 1.5 million. But our tourist population has reached 8 million. Please, I'm not making a mistake. It's reached 8 million. Now, all these people are coming to Goa for a simple reason. Because they all had pieces and slices of Goa in their own cities many years ago. If you look at Bangalore, Bangalore was known as the air-conditioned city, and they had beautiful gardens, and every avenue in Bangalore was lined with trees. So if you're living in an environment like Bangalore at that time, that was in the 60s, when I used to go there was no need for you to go to Goa because Goa was in your midst. The water was very good. The air was very pure. Now today, the entire city of Bangalore wants to get that encounter with nature all over again. There's only one place in the country. They say Goa. We go to Goa. So they all come to Goa. Now you can imagine the environmental impact of 8 million people coming to visit Goa because they want to see its greenery. And to accommodate those 8 million people, we require to put out thousands of flats and condos and Airbnbs and hotels. And all these guys who are known as real estate lobbies or whatever, they are decimating all the greenery and leaving very little left for whatever they are doing. So, you destroyed your Goa, now you come to Goa and destroy the original Goa. This is now the situation in which we are in. Because whatever you do, however successful you are, nature always beckons. You always need to go and look at nature in its original setting. And that is what the citizens of India are being progressively denuded everywhere because of this vast army, as I said, 97% of the population, which is only focused on economy, growth, jobs, and stocks. So how do you literally begin a movement in such circumstances? And I can only give you some examples of movements that have begun. The most famous one is a very recent one, and it was dealing um, with the proposals suddenly brought by three government actors. One was the PWD, one was the Central Electricity Authority, and one was the Indian Railway, Southwestern Railway. All three of them came up with three proposals almost at the same time to put their projects diametrically across the Bhagwan Mahavir Wildlife Sanctuary and National Park. Now, if you are looking for an environmental issue, there's nothing like this. Three major infrastructure projects going to cut across one of Goa's oldest wildlife sanctuaries and the largest wildlife sanctuary, notified actually first time in 1966. And all three of them, like all government agencies, say we are there to supply services to the public. You can't stop us from supplying services to the public. Goa needs electricity. Goa needs an additional railway line. Now, if you hear that language, you know it's not correct, because you really don't require an electricity line anymore to come to Goa. You got enough of railway lines, and now you've got two airports, and of course hundreds of bus services. But still, they're saying we need one more line to bring tourists to Goa, so that the population goes from 8 million to 16 million. But these are the arguments. And the third one was that we want to expand the highway, which is already existing. We want to expand it from 7 meters to 12 meters and so on. So now this is an area you can see where suddenly there's a potential for a movement of a very large size. Because the setting is very interesting, because the Bhagwan Mahavir Wildlife Sanctuary is like the Himalayas of Goa. I mean, in a certain sense, it's very far. It's at the edge of Goa. It's at the border between Goa and Karnataka. And nobody really goes there except, if you are taking the road to go to Belgaum from Goa or something, then there's a road that goes to the sanctuary from very old. It's a very old, built by the Portuguese. So you go through that and so on. So that's maybe once in 2 or 3 years, if you are going to Belgaum, you may go through that road and you will say, oh, what a wonderful sanctuary. But it's a beautiful sanctuary. It is there. Goans are living in Panji and Margao and Ponda and Vasco and all, which is all packed into a very dense area around the mouths of the Mandavi and Dwari rivers. And I can tell you with confidence that during the whole day, maybe sometimes months and sometimes during the whole year, nobody would even think about this Bhagwan Mahavir Sanctuary and National Park and so on, because it's like, the Himalayas. It's very far away for all of us. So here you've got a good opportunity to build a campaign, because nobody in his right mind, and anyway the law doesn't allow it, nobody in his right mind would think that you can put, a second track line in the wildlife sanctuary, and you can expand the highway so that more animals get killed trying to cross that highway, and then you would send an electricity 400 kilovolt transmission line to another portion of the wildlife sanctuary, because you know what transmission lines do. What they do, that they've got radiation, that they can affect the movement below. They require a lot of vegetation to be removed, and so on. So I mean, it's disturbances. All these are disturbances. I mean, we may not hear the hum of electricity lines, but animals do hear them, and they get cautious, and they've got much superior hearing abilities than we have. So how animals look at disturbance is different from what the way humans look at disturbance. They say that no, animals will take care of it, they will know how to move, they will do. But the moment they know that there is some disturbance, they won't go into that area, because they know the most dangerous thing that they ever face in their living existence is the two-legged animals. close to the two-legged animals, then they are in danger. So most of them, whether they are snakes, whether they are tigers, whether they are bison, most of them will stay discreetly away from any noise that is coming which is unnatural, like a train running or a bus, exhaust, or something else, or a hum of electricity wires. So we say, how do we now see that the public begins to think seriously about whether these projects should be encouraged? And of course, with government servants, you cannot really argue with them because they are God. They say we are government, we are an elected government, and the elected government can carry out whatever policies it wants. So if it wants to do this, it is in a public interest, it has to be done. Now, fortunately, there is a constitution. And fortunately, the constitution and the various laws passed by parliament do not really encourage this type of attitude. I mean, this is completely, unacceptable attitude from the parts of government servants. They don't even think that here is a wildlife sanctuary. Now, should we have a project going through it or not? Will we disturb those animals or not? Should we consider that or not? Now, maybe the animals can't talk, but should we not go and ask the people who are living by the side there, should we not go and ask the forest department, the wildlife departments, and all these things, whether to see whether we can put this thing or not? No, all the decisions are taken straight away. No, we will get all the permissions. We will get the forest permissions. We will get the wildlife permissions. We will get every permission. There is no way in which anybody can stop us from doing this. A lot of money is being pumped into this, thousands of crores for this, for the electricity line, 2,000 crores. For the railway line, another 2,500 crores. Everything is it's counted. The importance of everything is counted in the number of crores, and those crores are thrown at you as a ton of bricks, saying that you accept these good things that we are giving for you, or you just scoot because we'll bring the police and we'll put you inside, and we'll keep you inside for a few days. So, how did we succeed in the Monnet campaign? And we succeeded by having a campaign. Part of the campaign was with very experienced people like ourselves, but part of the campaign was with the new generation of youngsters who have come up in Goa. It's a very lovely young group of people who have come up, who perhaps because of the last 30-40 years of the education system, when wildlife and nature and everything were banned from the schools, that sense of deprivation has brought them searching for wildlife and for plants. And I was amazed to find in this whole generation of groups, young people, all below the age of 30, remarkable wildlife guys, wildlife researchers, artists, painters, musicians. They got suddenly phenomenally galvanized by this whole prospect of doing something to save a wildlife sanctuary, which probably some of them have not even seen. But everybody knows what is the importance of a wildlife sanctuary. It's a domain for wildlife. It's under the law, under the Wildlife Protection Act 1972, Parliament, the Indian Parliament, that is the representative of more than 542 or more 570 people who have voted a law on behalf of the entire 1.4 billion people, and they have said this country needs wildlife sanctuaries, national parks, tiger reserves, conservation. Now nobody can dispute that, and nobody should be allowed to dispute. We have got courts to enforce it. We have got a Supreme Court. We have got a High Court. You have to look at all these resources that you have to see how you can deal with this problem. So naturally, because it is a vast problem, the decision makers, the social media guys, the newspapers, the TV guys are all in the coastal area around Panjim, Margao, Vasco, Ponda, etc. The problem is in Monnet, which is 30 to 35 kilometers away out, and nobody is even seeing it. But everybody knows that Monnet is part of 4 wildlife sanctuaries, which is been declared recently by a High Court judgment as a tiger reserve, which means that tigers will be moving from Kali Tiger Reserve in Karnataka to Goa, to the Goa Tiger Reserve, and then going up north to the Bhimghat Reserve and so on. So you would have, for example, a very large area for tigers to move and to have their population, because you know how tigers breed. Once a tiger is mature, if there is another tiger in the group, he can't remain. He has to go to another area and begin to set up his own family in another area. So tigers need space, and because tigers need space, they need food, and that food is supplied by all the other animals. And tigers are the top of the chain. So if you see a tiger, you know that the other animals, other species are also present, because if they are not present, the tiger will starve. So it's a very intricate chain that has been built up, which fascinates people. So we got our entire group getting together. One group said we will deal with the legal issues. We will file petitions before the Central Appellate Committee, before the High Court, before the Supreme Court. We'll make a nuisance of ourselves wherever we go. But we will file petitions with all our legal expertise showing that you cannot construct a second railway line, you cannot expand the railway, and you cannot put a high tension line through this. And the younger generation said, we don't know anything about law. Law is a matter of expertise. And somebody who is 30 years, 40 years is bound to be better than somebody who is only 20 years old. You know, Ram Jetmalani used to go and argue. Ram Jetmalani used to go and argue at the age of 92 in the court, because more expertise is there the longer you have spent in this issue. So these guys brought in their own level of expertise. They brought in art, they brought in music, they brought in flash mobs, they brought in all types of different innovations into the discussion, and they made an armchair Monnet campaign. This is our Monnet campaign, which began to gain a sort of traction all over social media, on Twitter, on Facebook, and so on, and ultimately reached even the Supreme Court. There were thousands of scientists, thousands of writers, wildlife people writing to the Supreme Court, writing to the High Court, saying that this should not be allowed, this should not be allowed. So when our legal challenge came up before the Supreme Court was ready. They knew what the issue was. They knew that this was a very important environmental issue, and they gave it sufficient amount of attention. And they told that electricity line company, no, we can't allow you to put up an electricity line in the virgin part of the wildlife sanctuary. You go to that there was an old line somewhere, you go and repair that and you replace that, but we will not allow you to damage any more trees. The same thing they told to the railways. They told the railways, you want a second line, you go to Visakhapatnam and from there you build a second line, but we are not going to allow you to construct a second line along this, because all the committee reports say that it's not possible and it's hazardous to the wildlife and it should not be allowed. So that is how we won that campaign. Now there's one more, the National Highway project, which we are gearing up to meet. But it became a mass movement of all actors of society. Even the politicians had to join in. It was not the BJP, which is the prevailing party here. It always happens. The one in charge will never support any environmental agitation. All the others will oppose. And then all the NGOs, civil society, the colleges, everybody pulled in, and we were able to get this thing brought down to its knees. Now, it's time for me to conclude. I don't know whether I have given you any magic tricks. There are no magic tricks in this environmental movement business. There are no magic tricks. You have to have a certain amount of environmental expertise which you have to develop and which takes some time, and it comes from only being passionate about it and being able to tell yourself that this is an important issue. It's an important issue for my generation. It was not an important issue for the generation of Claude Alvarez and Dr. Gurpur and all these people. It is an important generation for our generation, because who knows what other things we are going to face from climate change. So we are going to put our life into it. If some people are trying to trick us into trying to get an MA or a PhD or an MBA or something, well, we are going to be a bit cautious about it, because we don't know where that's going to be. well, we prefer to spend more time on these environmental issues because what water we drink and whether the air that we bring is polluted or not, just like in Delhi and Chandigarh and so on, we don't want to be caught in those type of situations. And we are already parts of India which are already caught in that trap and they don't know how to get out. So we also don't want to get into that. And as youngsters, we want to devote our time because this may be the last generation. We want to spend our time to see how we can adapt and how we can look after the little bit of nature that we have instead of going in for one more project which will demolish all that. So environmental expertise and passion is required. But number two is also an organizing ability. You have to be able to organize. Now, whether you organize for a consumer issue or whether you organize for a human rights issue or whether you organize for an environmental issue, it all comes down to how well the group you're working with is equipped. Because generally, it's not advisable to do things alone. Because when you do things alone, you can get disheartened. It's always good to have a group. Always have an environment group of 5, 10, 15 people from different disciplines, from different areas. They all get together. They discuss things. They support each other on certain issues. They commiserate if necessary together if they lose certain issues. But principally, one person may not have the necessary wherewithal to deal with all this. So you have to deal with it in terms of really having a group. That group may be registered, may not be registered. Nobody bothers about those things. You give yourself a name, take up an environmental issue that is pressing for you, and begin to work on it, gathering the environmental information that is there, working with other established environmental groups in the city, which will help you if necessary, do hand-holding if you want, and then you can do things on your own. So this is where I end for the moment because it's already 30. And if you have got any questions, I would be happy to answer them. But if not, then that is also very fine by me, and we can close the show. Yeah, is that okay, Dr.
Thank you so much, sir, for apprising us with your experience on movements of environmental issues. And I'm sure your experience has given enough insights to our participants so that they can start their own movement on any environmental issue. Any questions? Yes, sir, we have question for you.
Yes. What kind of like problems you faced apart from like the technical issues? Like, did you receive any life-threatening kind of stuff? Generally, that happens when somebody leads an environmental initiative. People threaten them, and that is very common. So did you came across that kind of an issue, and how you tackled that,
No,
if
no,
it is yes?
it has come with a lot of my friends, including RTI activists. You know, you must be reading the newspapers that very often RTI activists have been found murdered because they were asking too many questions and then they got cornered and they were beaten up or murdered. I mean, number of RTI activists who have been killed in India is quite amazing. But environmental activists are far few. And in my personal case, I think people fear me more than I fear them. So I have not had any of this issue because they feel that this guy is totally unreasonable. He spends all his time on this. He doesn't drink. He doesn't go for parties, and therefore it's very dangerous to deal with him because even if you have 50 lawyers on the other side, it's very difficult to come up with his argument. So they have stayed clear of threatening me. I have not received a single telephone call over the last 40 years. Sometimes I think it is a bogey. Sometimes it's a bogey. People say that you will receive telephone calls, you will do this. That's why I said work together always as a group. And you don't have to put your name up front. See, nobody is in this thing for their name. The environment is larger than all of us. So you have a group. And when you are strong enough to put yourself on media, on Facebook as a group with all identified persons with telephone numbers, then you do it. But before that, you just have a name. You say citizens for this ward in Pune, or citizens for the trees of Pune, or citizens for this year or whatever. You give yourself any name that you want and you operate under that name. Don't disclose any telephone numbers and don't disclose anything else, and you do your work, because nobody is going to bother ultimately about this, and uh, you should be a bit practical to see that you don't overexpose yourself until you are strong and until your group is strong. Once your group is strong and you are recognized and you have got a large support group in the city, like Parisar in Pune, I remember, is a very strong group. And there are many other groups in Pune. Then you can safely go on and nobody is going to dare to come and hassle you. And particularly if you are in courts, then they don't normally hassle you at all, because the court will normally ask, how is it that you are threatening the petitioners and so on, and then they will want to say that we have not done it, and we'll see that it is not done in future. But really, don't worry about threats. The greater threat to you right now is how the hell you are going to live your life in the next 30 years. So think about that threat. I am
Thank you,
already
sir.
gone. You can see my gray hair. We are already gone. I had a heart attack last year. So I've got a stent. So that will keep me for another 20 years if possible. I don't know. But you worry about your next 10 years. That is the biggest threat. Why Gulmur did not get 6 feet of snow this year. That is what you should worry about. Forget about individual phoning up and saying something now. Yes.
Okay, thank you, sir. Sir, we have one more question.
Hello. I was just wondering, you talked about like how it's never the government who supports environmental issues, and I was just thinking, how do you do community work if you cannot trust the people you're working with? Because you're like, or because the opposition will support you when it's time for electoral politics, and then afterwards when they come into the government, they won't support you because, like you said, the ruling party doesn't. So then, if you can't trust them to be with you when you require like their need, then how do you do community work?
See, we have no black and white issues. We don't say that the government, because it's the BJP government, is black. We had the same attitude when the Congress was here. When the Congress was here also, they were doing all the same stupid things. So we don't distinguish. Government is something that you have got to deal with for the rest of your life. And for as long as we have a democracy and a constitution, the government will be there. All countries have governments. You've got to make a deal with it and deal with it in somehow. So in sometimes we cooperate with governments. For example, when the government wants some help on garbage and all that, we always cooperate with government and help them out. When government wants help, for example, with the stray animals in the city, the entire stray animal population in Goa, which has been declared rabies free, is because of the work of NGOs. And Goa is one of the unique states where the government has an annual allocation of 10 crores to be given to animal welfare NGOs to ensure that the animals are all sterilized, etc., etc. So in spheres where we work together, we have no difficulty. But where there is sometimes a need for a conflict, then we take it head on, because we have to change the decision of the government. For that, we have to go to a court, because once government decides on something, then that becomes an order which has to be challenged in a court of law. Then we go and challenge it, and then we have on both sides. But recently in a mining case, the mining companies attacked the government, and the Goa Foundation, which is my institution, which has been fighting the mining companies, was now supporting the Goa government against the mining companies in court. And everybody was raising the eyebrows as how is the Goa Foundation now supporting the Goa government in their fight against the mining lobbies. So that is a strategic thing, that when you need, you work with them. But when they do something that is environmentally destructive, then you tell them, sorry, you can't do this. They may, despite that, they may ride roughshod over you. They may use the police. They may use the ED. They may do all sorts of things. But ultimately, I told you, the greater threat is what is coming, and which is already upon us. So it is far better time to worry about those issues than this. I would say, as a general thing, work with whatever levels of government you want to. For example, my village of Parra, we have a panchayat. So we work with the village of panchayat to show them how to prepare their development plans. So the panchayat is also government. Under Article 12 of the Constitution, the state is defined as central government, state government, and local bodies. That is the panchayat. They are part of state. So we work with the panchayats. So if we can work with the panchayats, a good time, period of our time goes there. So it's all different levels. Sometimes we work with the central government. Sometimes we work with the state government. Sometimes we work with the Comptroller and Auditor General. Now he's also a government body, to see how they do their calculations and accounts of the income from mining and so on. So it's not, as I said, a black and white thing. And I don't think that the government is ever going to stop you from doing real community work. For example, if you are running a community kitchen, or you are running a community shelter, or you are doing something like that, no government is going to come, no politician would like to be seen on the wrong side of these type of issues. So there's plenty of good work to do, environmental work, social work, there's plenty of it available without having to worry about whether you will be in conflict with the government or not.
Thank you so much, sir. It is really enriching to listen to your experiences, and we hope to have you here at Symbiosis Law School, Pune physically, so that we can listen to more experiences. With this, we come to an end to your session.